For this next lesson, we're going to be looking at lists in Python. Now, sometimes I might refer to this as an array. Okay, so all you've got to think of is, if I call it an array, I mean a list. The reason I say that is because in Python, you don't technically have arrays. Python has lists. Most programming languages do use arrays, and a list is basically the same sort of thing as an array. You can have what's called a 1D array, which is this. You can have a 2D array and a 3D array, but we're only going to be looking at 1D arrays for this part here. So this is an example of what an array could look like, or a list could look like. So if you think of it like a box, and in each of these we've got positions. So this is a scores list. So in position 0, we could have a number 2 as an example, if we wanted to. And then in position 1, we could have a 3, 9, 12, we could have 100. So each of these is an individual box. Okay, and if we wanted to try to find out then, so for example, we wanted to find out what is in position number 1, what we would do is we'd look at, well, that there is position number 1, and then in position number 1 is 3. So how do we know that? Well, obviously that's position number 1. Now in normal sort of terms, you probably would count and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so forth. But obviously in programming and anything to do with computing, we always start at position 0. So that's why you've got a 0 there. Now these arrays are very, very, very important because they can be used to store things like numbers, but they can also be used to store text. So if I just erase this very quickly, even though I've put numbers in here because this says scores, you could also put text in there as well. Now I'm going to switch very quickly to an online Python editor and give you a really quick run through how some of these lists work. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is you're going to create a list. Now in Python, what you would do is you would do, let's say, scores equals, and if I do open close bracket, that there creates a list for us. Okay, now that list is actually an empty list, and just to show you, if I do this, print scores, and let's just run that, you can see it's printed absolutely nothing out, which is fine. We'd expect that. So it hasn't got anything on there. Now, what happens if we start adding data here? So let's add a little bit of data. So 46, 4, 33, 8, 7, and let's do one more, 66. So I've added some random numbers here. I know the numbers, they're integers, because I haven't put them in speech marks. So if I run that, you can see they've put everything in there like so. Now we can do a number of things with this. We can remove. So if I did this, scores.remove, and let's say, for example, I remove 4. Let's run that. So what it's done is it's removed the number 4 from there. What I should also do is if I print scores, so what this will do is it'll print it before whatever we do to it, and then it'll print it after. So you can see there it's removed the number 4. So it hasn't removed position 4, but it's removed the number 4. And again, if I change that to 33 as an example, it's going to remove the number 33. What happens if you want to remove a certain position? Well, if you do pop, if I just open and close bracket, pop is a quick way to remove something. And if I don't put anything in this method here, it'll always remove the last option. So if I did pop number 3 as an example, that's going to pop position 3, which happens to be on number 8 but there. Okay, so we've done remove, we've done pop. We can also do a few other things. If I wanted to do index, so index will provide me with the position. Let's have a look. If I do 46, and then what I'm gonna probably have to do with this one, if I just show you what it'll do, this one doesn't actually do anything here, right? So what we'd have to do is save this as a variable. So position equals. So with this one now, I'm going to save whatever the position is as a variable called position. And you can see there it's in position 0. So if I change that now just to show you to say number 7, it's in position number 7. Now that's very useful if you're trying to find something in an array, or you want to find something that is essentially at a certain point. There's other things we can do. We can sort the array as well. So if I do this, let me get rid of this for a second and go scores equals scores dot sort. Oh, wrong one, sorry. I don't need to assign it to a variable. So what this has done is it's sorted my array. We can also do something called a reverse. And what that does is it reverses the array. So it puts it then back to front. And we can also insert things into the array. Scores.insert. Open brackets. I'm going to insert into position 2. 10. Watch what happens now when I run this. So in position 2, which is here, it's added the number 10. Okay. Now we can add, we can take out, we can also split if we wanted to. So we could split this into 2. But the one thing I am going to show you now is how we would add a number of things one after the other. So I'm going to go through a very quick task with you, and then I'm going to leave you and ask you to complete a few tasks on your own. Okay. So we're going to do this task first, which is write a random name generator that asks the user to input 5 names. We're going to store them in an array, and then we're going to output them. Now you've seen I've just been using numbers here, but we can also use strings. So we're using integers at the moment. We can use strings. We could use floats as well. So let's see how we tackle this. So we'll start off with name. All right, name equals, I tell you what, with name list equals, and we're going to have this blank. So name list equals blank. Great. And then what we're going to do is we're going to ask then to enter the name 5 times. Now I'm going to use a loop for this, and for this we're going to use a for loop. So I can say for I in range and 5. So this is going to loop around 5 times. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say name equals input, please enter a name. And then what we need to do is we need to add that in to the name list. Now we could, if we wanted, we could use that insert option. And then we could just say insert I, whatever the name variable is. But there's another way we could do it. So we use something called append. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say name list dot append name. All this does is it basically takes the variable name, appends it, so adds it into the name list. And then what we need to do is we need to print out whatever's in the name list. Print name list. So a very simple program, and it's actually quite elegant there. So let's run it. Let's see what happens. So we got please enter a name, Dave, Jim, Jane, Josh, Bob. So what it's done, it's now shown you a list of names, and we've obviously now put them in, and they are as strings. And just to show you, if we did this, print name list, let's do position 1. Dave, Jane, there you are. Jane there is in position number 1. Okay, so that's how we would do the first problem here. Let's make this a little bit more difficult. So we've done this first part. Let's have a look at this next part. So it's still write a random name generator that asks the user to input 5 names. stores them in an array, and then outputs one of them at random. So all we need to do is we need to basically change this a little bit. Now I know in my list I've got 5 things going in. So we know really we just need to make a random number between 1 and 5. Now the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to import a random library, and you've done this already. So import, we'll do from random import rand int, because we're going to use a random integer. And then outside of this library, we're going to say, let's have a look, person equals rand int, and then we've got to give 2 variables between 0 and 4. Right, because we've obviously got 5 positions in here, so we put that. And then all we do is we do print name list person. So it seems a little bit harder, but really it's not. It's just modifying it by adding in the random library and basically generating a random number there. So let's run this. So the first thing we need to do is enter the names. And it's picked out Jim there as being a random number. Now just to show you, if I print person and we rerun this code, so it's picked out there, number 3 is random, and we can see in position 3 of the list is Jane. Before I leave you go and do tasks, I'm going to change one more thing, and I'm going to show you one more little task that I'd like you to look at. Okay, so it's still using the same sort of layout that we've used. So write a random name generator that asks the user to input 5 names, stores them as an array, and outputs the names one at a time, stating the position that they were entered. Okay, so what can we do for this? Well, I'm going to show you something now that we can use to try and find the length of an array. Okay, so I don't need the random integer for that one, so I'm just going to get rid of that. So instead of entering them as a line, we're going to then enter them one at a time. Now what we can do is we can say this: for I in range, and then I'm going to say len name list. Now what this does, I'll have to put this in double brackets, I think. So what this does is it looks at the length of the name list. Now we are obviously putting 5 items in, okay, but if we didn't know how big the list was, then we could use this little bit of code here to find the length of the name list and then just loop around that amount of times. Because it might be the case that sometimes you're dealing with programs where you don't know how many items are in the list or how many times you need it to complete. It may be the case that you have to press a certain key to stop doing that. So let's add a few more things in. So we need now to look at the position and the person's name. So this is quite easy. We're going to say print and then position, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a comma, and I'm going to cheat a little bit here. So I'm going to put I plus 1, so it'll say something like position number 1 instead of saying position 0. It just makes it a bit more readable. And then I'm going to put a comma and then name list, and then we're going to do I again. Okay, now that looks a little bit confusing. Got to remember to do my capitals. It looks a little bit confusing, but really all it's doing is it's saying position, whatever the number is, and then we're going to say the person's name. So let's run this as a option here. Please enter a name. Dave, Jane, Bob, Phil, Claire. So position 1 is Dave, correct. 2 is Jane, correct. 3 is Bob, correct, Phil, and then we've got Claire there. So that is how you would complete that task. There's one last thing that I'm going to show you, and I promise this will be the last thing. We are going to change this for a variable. So we're going to ask the person number of, I tell you what, I'm just going to leave it number because it's number of names. Int input, how many names are you going to enter? So what we do in here is we're going to ask the user how many names they want to enter. We're then going to replace this here with number, and then we've got a fully dynamic program. This now will allow us to enter however many names we want, and it'll also enter the positions. So let's try that one. So how many are we going to enter? We're going to enter 10. I'm going to think of 10 names now. Dave, Jim, Richie, Bob, Steve, Hannah, Nicola, Ange, Claire, Phil. And there you have it. I haven't had to change anything. All I've got now is the program. It's looking dynamically at this because I've entered how many times I wanted to loop. And then this bit of code on the bottom here looks at the length of the array, and then it's just going to print out the positions there. Hopefully you've enjoyed that, and it's given you a little bit of an insight into lists. Have a go at the quick little tasks that I've got set for you on Moodle. There's not going to be a lot of them this time because I am gearing you up to do the bingo challenge. Best of luck, and if you need anything, give me a little email.